All right. Thank you guys for joining us this evening for this webinar about what it's like to study at an Ivy League. My name is Wendy Beato, and I am the International University Advisor at Varsity Abroad. Prior to being at Varsity Abroad, I used to be the school counselor at the American International School here in Cape Town, and have been a school counselor in New York City, Florida, and before moving to South Africa and doing what I'm doing now. So one of the reasons why I explained that is that this is what I do for a living. I went to school to do this. I have a master's degree in school counseling from Fordham University in New York. Go Fordham. And one of the things that I have to do as part of my job is that I need to keep in touch with what is happening in the international circuit and helping my students make sure that they are filling those requirements and to the best of their ability so that they can have a good chance at getting accepted to great universities like the one that Nick got accepted to. And I'm going to let him introduce himself right now.
Yeah, thank you, Wendy. Very excited to be here. I'm Nicholas. I'm a junior at the Wharton School of UPenn. I grew up in Cape Town, went to high school in Cape Town, and I'm very excited to give you a little bit of insight into my journey and ultimately tell you about the Get a College Mentor project.
All right. So this is where I embarrass Nick a little bit. This is Nick's picture when he joined me back in 2017. Look how nice and young and fresh he looks. and he was, he's very humble, but Nick has been one of like my most remarkable students. And two things come to mind specifically. For once, his recommendation letter from his teacher, which I've put a little bit at the bottom here, has been the one recommendation letter that I always remember when I talk to teachers about what your recommendation should look like. I mean, just if you read the first sentence, apart from literally standing head and shoulders above his peers in his year group, is also true on a figurative level. I mean, just imagine someone actually saying that about you. And again, one of the best recommendations I've ever received. And the other thing was that Nick has been probably the only student I've ever had in my 20 years of being a counselor who only got 2 revisions for his essay. And it was 2 revisions because it was so good the first time that I had to send it to an editor to just confirm. And it was amazing, like really, really great. He is a fantastic public speaker. He was really well known for that at Bishops when he was there. And he really did show it. And the fact that he got into the University of Pennsylvania, he actually got into the early decision cycle. So it was quite early in his journey. I'm sure that had he applied to other schools, not in the early decision cycle, he probably would have had quite a few to choose from. So I say this because he really is a well worth student to know and to have as a mentor. There are many students obviously in the program, but I definitely believe in what he's doing. And I usually like to recommend people that I'm comfortable with. I will never like put my support behind something that I don't trust. And I really do think that Nick is a fantastic person for you to get to know if you're thinking about studying overseas at an Ivy League. So with that in mind, we're going to actually start the actual interview. So I just want to talk to you, Nick, and can you start by telling us about your journey about studying abroad? Like, how did it begin? How did you decide and how do you prepare for it?
Yeah, absolutely, Wendy. It's a while back now for me. But yeah, I remember that it sort of first occurred to me that this was something I wanted to do when I was in grade 8 and there was a matric at my school who was just most extraordinary high achiever, really stood out amongst his grade, and then at the end of the year got into Harvard, which I did not think, it was possible to go from Cape Town to the Ivy League, and was super impressed by that and thought, maybe this is something that I could aim for as well. But beyond that, I'd noticed that, he left the school and really made a mark in it, and it seemed like he'd completely squeezed the lemon dry in terms of extracting value from his time in high school, and that was something that I wanted to do. So yeah, I decided perhaps the place to start is to set an unachievable goal, which turned out to be actually quite achievable, and then figure out from there, what did he do and what have others done to get into these really great schools, and maybe I can try and emulate that in my own way. So yeah, for me that, and I should say that these things are always quite specific. Your journey is going to be specific because what you're good at is always, specific. For me, it was public speaking, as Wendy mentioned. I really loved doing that. It was something I wanted to get better at. So I went sort of, put all my cards into that and worked quite hard at that. So by the time I was in grade 11, I had competed across South Africa and for South African public speaking. That really became sort of the checkmark achievement there. And that single activity really unlocked this possibility for me. I did a few other things, made sure I was very involved with school and took up leadership positions and those sorts of important things too. But yeah, I really focused on this goal, not knowing where I wanted to apply yet, not even seriously thinking of what it would look like or, what my life would look like if I did just push that all to the back of my head and just thought, right, let's try and achieve something to unlock this opportunity. And yeah, that brings me to about grade 11 when I thought, now we actually have to start thinking about the application and can go into some of the details of the
yeah, and that's actually what I'm going to ask you next is, what was the application process like for you? So, how did you choose the universities? What was the up and down of the application? When did you start and all of that?
Yeah, so I suppose it makes sense perhaps to just say why I thought the US and the Ivy League was going to be something that I should strive towards. I wasn't too sure what I wanted to study. I knew it wanted to be, something around a business degree. Had I stayed in Cape Town, I probably would have done finance. But I had broader interests, so the liberal arts style did make a lot of sense to me, so that really put the US at the top of the list, and then the Ivy League just seemed like something to aspire towards. But I did not know specifically which university I wanted to go to. I didn't know what the ins and outs of them would be, what the differences really were, what the differences between living in Boston and living in Philly would, and quite significant differences. But yeah, I didn't know any of that. So I think in the beginning of my matric year, which is really when I started to get involved with Varsity abroad, and when it was really helpful in helping me make some of those decisions and whittling it down to a few options. But then from there, it is still quite difficult. I was fortunate in that there were a number of kids from my school who were ahead of me, and I, chatted to them quite a lot. Were at Penn, found out what it was really like to go to those universities, and Wharton started to make like a lot of sense for me. I knew I wanted to do finance, and I wanted to go down career paths that Wharton is very good at feeding you into. And it seemed like it would gel well with what I was looking for from a university experience. So I started, whittled down a little further and decided, okay, I'm making an early decision application to one of these universities, and it seems like Wharton will be the right place. But it is very much a process, and I suppose we'll touch on this in a bit later, but speaking to as many people as you possibly can is the only way to make the decision.
So what made you apply to Wharton for the early decision? And before you get into that, just explain, there are two application cycles in the US. There's early decision, early action, which you apply early and you have an early answer. So in December, you get to know whether you've been accepted. And then you have your regular decision applications, which is deadlines in January, and you only find out in March. So usually early decision, early action, universities have a lot of restrictions with each other to make sure that they don't have people applying to multiple places and so on. So you had to make a decision early on saying, I'm going to apply early to this school. And one of the ways that I describe early decision is like asking someone to marry you. It's like you basically asking the school to marry you. And if they say yes, that's it. All your applications have to be dropped. You cannot apply anywhere else or accept any other offers if they say yes. Early action is more like, let's go on a date. So I don't think that Penn gives you the chance to go on a date. They basically say we either get married or not. So what made you choose them?
Yeah, it's a very difficult decision to make because, as you say, if you get in, then you've made a commitment. So if you're going to do an early decision one, you just have to really think carefully. Do I really want to go to this university? I'm not just applying, because I think it's a big name or something. Because a big name is great, but you're going to be there for 4 years. So hopefully you enjoy it too. And Yeah, I think on paper it made a lot of sense for me. As I say, I wanted to study finance, also wanted a little bit of a liberal arts background, and all of these universities are good for the liberal arts thing, but Wharton is standout for if you want to study finance, or any business related subject really. And then in terms of the campus, I had been to Philadelphia once before and actually quite liked it. And each of these universities have their own, I suppose, vibe would be the word. Um, and you might like some a little more than others. And from conversations that I had, I thought Penn sounded like a really fun place to be. And it seemed like a place where I would meet like-minded people. So I was very comfortable in the end making that decision, but I did give it a huge amount of thought. And my advice on that would be, the year's gonna, if you're in matric now, the year's just gonna get crazier and crazier. I've had some really stressful weeks at Penn and, doing internships that have been very intense, but there were points in matric which I thought were just unbelievably stressful, because you have all these decisions to make and to tie up. And then you also, you don't want to get too entrenched in it because you also have to enjoy your matric here. So I think if you guys are on holiday at the moment, potentially, I would definitely spend a lot of time now thinking through these decisions. If you put a lot of work getting to this stage, it doesn't really make sense to do it on the flip of a coin. You need to be really deliberate about where you choose to go, why you're choosing to go there. And I think that's going to set you up not only for a strong application, successful application, but hopefully a successful 4 years.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you said that. So for my students who are with me in matric here right now, your application timeline happens in the middle of your matric exams, because the applications for the US happens for American students that go from August to June. But for you guys in South Africa happens right in the middle of matric exams. So a lot of the work that we do is do as much as possible before application season begins in August 1st, so that when those supplemental essays, lovely supplemental essays that are going to come up later on, and that you're going to have to do in the middle of your exams, it doesn't become too much. So the more you do ahead of the time, the more managed the stress will be, because it is going to be stressful. I'm not going to lie. I tell my families, I'm not going to lie. It's going to be very stressful, but it's all about, if you do as much as you can now, you're going to have a lot more fun. And my students, when we used to be able to have matric rage, I used to always panic. So I used to be like, your essays are not done. But I always used to tell them, if you want to go to rage, do all your essays, and then you can go and really relax. So thank you for letting them know that it is going to be a lot of work. And something else I always tell my students is like, I see, like, I grew up in New York City and I went to high school in New York. So, and I see that what my kids are going through, and you guys, especially South African kids, and it's like, it's insane the amount of work and preparation that you do as a matric student that is so different to how it is in the US. So that when you get to university, it's actually not that hard. And because you are prepared for it already. So you tend to do really well because you guys have been trained to do this at this level. And just to also explain something that you've mentioned quite a bit about liberal arts. So in the US, you are prepared for university, not just for your whole education. It's not just a career. So you don't just go and become an accountant and so on. They give you a well-rounded education, and you have up to 2 years when you get there to decide your major. So even though you might want to go and do finance, you might go to the university and decide like, oh, wow, I actually like more, political science, and you can change majors. You don't have to change the university. You just basically go from one faculty to the other. So that's another reason why when Nick says that he liked that approach, is that if you don't know what you want to do, but you have an idea more or less, the US allows you to explore the different interests and sometimes even combine them into a major and a minor, so that you can then decide what you want to do. And then just, like I said, go to a different faculty. So in the US, you get accepted to the university, not to a program. So when you get into UPenn, you get into UPenn, the university. If you change your mind and want to go into something totally different, as long as you meet the requirements, you should be able to change faculties. And that's one of the wonderful things about the US, is that it allows you to, find yourself. So I'm going to get to the question is, you get that admissions letter. What did that feel like for you to get that acceptance? Share that with us.
That was a fantastic experience. So I was actually flying home at the time. I was in the UK, and they released a decision. You sort of have an idea of when the decision will come out. And for me, it was when I was going to be in the air. So I was sitting on the plane, obviously with no access to Wi-Fi, wondering what it was. And yeah, I landed, was urgently trying to get some 3G on my phone, couldn't remember my password, so couldn't do it through my phone. And then I think I ended up in the baggage collection area with my laptop out, creating a hotspot. And yeah, you go through the application portal, and usually you'll open it and there'll be some music that plays and a graphic of streamers or something. At least that's how Penn does it, and says, welcome to Penn. It was really just phenomenal. You don't really think about it in too much detail, or at least I didn't, until you actually get there. It doesn't seem real. You're just sort of plugging away at getting your application in and ticking all the boxes over several years to make sure that you're a good candidate. And yeah, it all comes to a head when you open that application portal. But it was really fantastic. And then, yeah, a few days after that, started thinking about logistics, which gets a bit meatier, but yeah, it was fantastic.
Absolutely. So now let's take you. Now you get your visa, you have all your stuff, and you arrive to campus. Can you tell us what that's like?
Yeah, that was also a phenomenal experience. I think if you go to university in the US, it's going to be so different to what the experience is in South Africa. Obviously, it's a very different culture. It's a great conglomeration of students. I think Penn is like 30% international as well. So you're just meeting kids from all over the place, and there are a decent amount of South Africans there as well. But yeah, it was a whirlwind. I think your first few weeks of university are definitely some of the highlights that you'll remember for a long time. It certainly was for me. And then after about 2 weeks, the work starts. That gets quite intense quite quickly. But it was a huge learning experience. So at Penn, they are very intense on clubs, for instance. Everyone wants to join a club at Wharton. It'd be like an investing club or a venture capital club or something like that. That's sort of the thing to do in your first year. And coming from school in Cape Town, more or less, if you wanted to join a club and you'd showed interest, you would be allowed to join the club. At Penn, you have to recruit for these clubs, and there's like 3 interviews to get into them. And everybody wants to get, so it was quite an experience for me, because I strolled in there thinking this is going to be a breeze, and then applied to maybe 10 clubs and got into 2, didn't get into 8. Quite a surprise. And you just quickly realize this is a bit of a different level, and the competition is through the roof. And then you acclimatize to that as well. And it's a really phenomenal learning experience, and you get to compete with kids who are, just put in so much effort and really ambitious, and I suppose it pushes you in the right direction as well. So it was a bit of a learning curve in the first year, but it was a lot of fun, and something I look back on very fondly.
Do you have anyone help you, like when you get there, like any of your past students or from your same school, or anyone from South Africa, or anyone you knew? Who was helpful?
Yeah, absolutely. So there were 3 South Africans there who had been at my school, and actually I think all Varsity Abroad students as well. And they were incredibly helpful. So I spoke to them when I was deciding which university to apply to. I spoke to them when I was applying to Penn, and then I spoke to them when I got in, and then I met them all the time when I arrived, and they were incredibly helpful. And it was a really important, I think, aspect of settling in. Not only did they show me the ropes, but it was just really great to get there and have a familiar face around, when everything's still a bit overwhelming and new. So I would say, as far as possible, if you can lay down some of those networks early on to help you, make these decisions as you're applying, but then also, if you get in, to help you find your feet when you arrive, that's probably the best thing you can do in terms of preparation.
And this actually brings me to what we do initiative, Get a College Mentor. So what has happened throughout the years is that when I have other students apply to universities like the Ivy Leagues and so on, I have approached all, past students and say, listen, would you mind speaking to one of my students? And I have spoken to you several times and said, would you mind speaking to this student and the family and so on, just to give them an idea of what they can expect. And even for those personal questions from the universities that they have to do for applications, it has been really, really helpful. So Nick approached me about a year ago with this idea about get a college mentor. And I mean, you can see from his background about getting that help, how much that was very useful for him. So can you tell us about your initiative, Get a College Mentor, and, why you wanted to start it and what you want to do with it?
Yeah, absolutely. As you mentioned, Wendy, it was something that I found very helpful, and a lot of the other South Africans in my year at Penn had very similar experiences. They had somebody who went to Penn or went to Columbia or something like that, and really plugged them in along the way. So we felt that it would be a really great thing to assemble all of these networks into one place. I don't even know how many South Africans are studying in the US. We were speaking about this before. Of a lot of people that I didn't even know were in the US. So there is a network of ex-South African students that have moved over, and it's just a little fragmented and disparate. But we found when we've been trying to recruit mentors that everyone is exceptionally willing to give their time. It's all volunteer based, so it's free to connect with anybody on the site, and they are essentially volunteering their time. Because we all went through this process ourselves, and it can be a daunting process. And I think the real value add is that you can read as much as you want about a university, but at the end of the day, if you're applying to Princeton or Georgetown or something, it's very difficult to visualize what your life will actually be like once you're there. So we wanted to give everybody access to basically a source of on-the-ground insight. And added to that, these are not just students, these are South African students. So they will know where you're coming from. They'll have been through pretty much the exact same journey that you're about to go through. And yeah, I would really encourage everybody to take advantage of this. We are continually building out, at the moment it's just Ivy Leagues, but we are building out how many schools are covered and how many mentors are available at that school. But yeah, I would encourage everybody to take a rummage around who is currently available, and definitely start reaching out. And essentially the way it works is that you connect with the mentor. We will show you the website in a second, but you can see some basic information about them, where they went to school in South Africa, what their interests are, what their ambitions are, and you can select for some of those things and hopefully choose somebody who might be aligned to what you're aiming for. And yeah, from there, it's all up to you to form a good relationship with them and figure out how they can help you. And hopefully, if you get into their university, you can become friendly with them in person down the line.
Yeah, and you never know, an internship, they're going to get jobs soon, and they might help you with that. So and can you tell me what will a mentor do and what they don't do? Because I think that's something that you and I talked about quite a bit, just to make sure that people don't get the wrong idea about what they're getting into. So can you just explain that to the people that are watching?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is considerably important, I think. So we're not college advisors. I, for instance, know how I got into Penn. I can't speak to how anybody else got into Penn. To be honest, I probably wouldn't be completely useless at giving you advice on how to get into any of these schools, because that's not my expertise. What I could tell you about is what it's like to be a student at Penn. What it was like moving over from South Africa, how competitive it is. How do you manage with the new academic environment? How do I think about job prospects? How does that process work? What sort of people did I meet? Was it easy to make friends? All of these things, which will be thoughts that pop into your head along the way, particularly, once you've gotten in, and the other important milestone when you're deciding which university is right for you. So that's really where we come in. We're not college advisors, but we are essentially just trying to encourage good conversations between people where they can share their experiences and insights, and you can have access to that data point, which is not going to be available anywhere else. Mm-hmm. Certainly not on websites or even YouTube videos, which are pretty much always done by American students.
No, absolutely. And like I said, especially for those students who are writing those supplemental essays, where they ask you, what is it that you like about the school? It's a good way to talk to a student that says that is already there and say, what are the things that you like about it? What is the pro, what is the con, and so on? Because that will help you. Having inside information is definitely a great
Yeah.
thing. And I think that's fantastic that you guys are giving your time. And I actually, before I even move on to the next question, I want you to tell them where you are actually right now, because there's something very unique about the fact that you are still studying, but you're actually working at the moment. Can you, kind of share how that came about through you, Penn, and how that's working out for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm actually in Amsterdam at the moment. I've been here since February doing a full-time internship with a tech investment firm. So what's really great about a lot of these universities in the US is they're quite flexible on their semesters. I got to December last year, had done, as you will have all done too, about 8 months of virtual learning, and just thought this was not a good, use of my university experience, and was fortunate to get a job offer. So ended up doing that instead for this past semester, and then I go back to Penn in the fall. And it's quite simple to work your curriculum around things like that. So overall, I'd say, the university experience, despite being very intense and very competitive in all of these things, is very flexible. If there's something specific you want to do or want to achieve, they make it happen for you, which is really quite extraordinary. And I don't think there are many places in the world where you could manage that.
And that's amazing. I mean, the fact that you are still a university, but you already have a job, that you're going to be spending a semester in the Netherlands doing this, and then you're going to go back to school. I was actually chatting to him earlier that he's going into his senior year. So I am so old right now. You're going into senior year already at Penn, and that, I mean, when you graduate, you would have already experience in your field in networking, and that's one of the things I always talk to my families about. It's like, when you say, why should I go and study abroad? It's like, because you're going to meet a lot of people. You're going to have a lot of opportunities like the one that you have right now, where you're in a totally different country and getting experience, and the networking, who you meet in the dorms and through these mentoring programs and so on. These are the people that you're going to end up either working with in a company or building your own companies and all of that. So absolutely something to consider. When you're looking at what do you want out of your study abroad experience, this is one of the things that you can get is that kind of flexibility. And I mean, the global job market, I mean, you might not even end up in the US. You might end up somewhere totally different because of your experiences. Yeah, so that's cool. So how can you tell us a bit about the website? And I know that we're going to show them in a bit what it's like, but just tell us like how it's set up and people how they can find out more about Get a College Mentor.
Yeah, so we'll show you the website in a second. It's very simple. Essentially, it's just a few profiles of our mentors. And as I say, we're adding to them all the time. And you can filter for schools. So you can choose mentors from Harvard or Princeton or Penn, and a few other schools at the moment. And you can see some basic information about each of those mentors, basically, where they're from in South Africa, which high school did they go to, what extramural activities, if they're big water polo players or public speakers, what are their activities at the universities, and what are their career goals. And on the basis of that information, you can choose somebody who you think you'd be interested in finding, finding out more about, and maybe it would be a good fit in terms of your personality and your interests. And yeah, then you just hit the connect button, and you can write a short request message to them, which gets emailed to them, and then they'll get back to you about setting up a time. And then, as I say, from there on out, it's up to you and your mentor to form a relationship and figure out how they can be of help and how many times you want to chat to them. That's all up to you. So it's very free, freestyle, but we're essentially just an aggregator of people and giving you a point of access to them.
And just to say that no one's getting paid for this. There's actually no fees or no sign up or nothing. This is actually volunteer work from people around, those Ivy Leagues and the students that are available. So this is totally out of the goodness of their heart. So by all means, thank you for actually starting something like this, because I know that I always pester my old students and go, can you speak to these students? So it's so good that you actually are getting others. I was looking at the website a few minutes ago, and seeing people from other places that even though they are South Africans, they're actually other people from other countries in Africa, because I did see some
Southern Africa,
other places there. So it's not just South African students, there's other students as well. So we're almost coming to the end, and I have a question. I actually have questions for you, which is, you are in your third year of university. If you had to meet your matric self again, so you back in matric in that cute picture that I showed earlier, what advice would you give yourself?
Yeah, I think I wouldn't change anything I did, but the advice I would certainly give myself is, just don't worry about whether or not it's going to work out. Just give it the absolute best go. It seemed, if I really thought about it in February of matric year, was I going to go to Wharton? That didn't, it seemed like I was a reasonable candidate, but surely I couldn't get into an Ivy League university. And I would just say, don't think about things like that. Don't worry about it unless it's a problem. Just give it your absolute best shot. I've never for even half a second regretted going to the US and going to Penn. It's been the most phenomenal opportunity. So do what absolutely ever you can over the next few months to put in the best application. Spend as much time on it as you can. Use Wendy for all the resources that she offers. Give it your best shot and just aim for the thing that you want, because there's no point selling yourself short.
Yeah. And one advice from me is for you guys to start early. If you're in matric year at the moment, it's not late. You can still do it. It's just a matter of doing quite a bit of things, hopefully ahead of your exams. If you're in grade 11, that is actually the best time to begin, because you have more time in grade 11 that you do in grade 12, so that you can get a lot of the research and stuff done. So definitely start early, and get to know what is out there. So with that, I actually want to share, before we go into the Get a College Mentor, is one of the ways for you to get familiar with what you have to do is to either by going and watching my webinars. I have very detailed webinars about what it's like to study in these places around the world, and what it takes for you as a South African student to apply to these regions. So if you haven't watched the webinars, I think that they're like 20 to 25 minutes long, but I do give you lots of details, including like what they're going to look at, activities, are there, what are recommended, financial aid and scholarships and all that stuff. So that's one way for you to know. I also have, I do share quite a bit of information also on social media. So like these things, like these webinars that I'm having and so on. So do follow along. But let's go and have a look at the Get a College Mentor website. So this is what it looks like when you get here. So what do I do, Nick? Once I land here, where should I go?
Yeah, so super simple. Either in the toolbar at the top or the bottom left button, you just click on Get a Mentor, and then you can select for one of those universities. So University of Pennsylvania could be one, and there you can see some examples of profiles, and you can basically get some basic information there about some of the students, so you can see where they came from and what they're studying and what their interests are. And then you just hit connect, and you can basically write a short message to them that will let them know that you're trying to reach out, and as simple as that, and they'll get back to you. And you take it from there.
Countries as well. So
so it's some Zim students, some Botswanian students, mostly South African, but it's a nice mix. And we aim to get more and more mentors, and hopefully if any of you use it and enjoy it and get into some of these schools, you can sign up at some point in the future yourselves.
I know, absolutely. I'm going to be recommending a few of my other universities that I see there. So so fairly simple for you guys to join. You basically just go to getacollegementor.com, and then just get a profile, get yourself connected to someone. And what happens if there's not, like if someone is applying to a school and there's no one yet available for that? will they be able to sign up with someone else?
Yeah, listen, so I mean, if you have a school that we just, don't seem to cover it all, you can always contact us and we can try and find out if there is somebody we can connect you with. More than happy to do that. So you can just click contact at the top right of the website, and you can get our email. But I would, encourage you to speak to, if you set on applying to Harvard, but you see there's, and you're a rower and want to go work in investment banking, and you see there's a guy at Princeton who fills that profile, I would encourage you to speak to him, because, it's not only chatting to find out about specifics of the university, but, you can speak about a lot more general questions like moving to the US and whether or not it's the right decision to study abroad and all of these things. So I would, filter certainly for universities, but also filter for the people themselves and some of that information on the profiles. And I would, everybody is volunteers. So obviously just be mindful of, of everybody's time, but they're very willing to chat to you. So just be considerate about your questions and setting up a reasonable time in a nice way. And I'm sure you will get a huge amount of value for it. And the only other point that we have is, I'm not sure if we have any parents on, but we do encourage students, if students are the ones that should be reaching out and should be having these conversations, it should be student to student. I know parents are sometimes very involved in the application process, but we would prefer if this particular area was just left between the students.
And I have to say that same thing happens with the universities, where they actually want the students to be their own advocate, and they will only actually speak to students, not parents. So it's definitely a way to practice how to get information, how to communicate, also with the admissions at those universities, because they basically want to make sure that if you are going to be going to that university, that you can do things on your own, because your parents are not going to be there. And in the US, it's such a different way of how things happen here in South Africa. And it's like, you need to demonstrate independence. That's one of the things that they want to figure out is, will you be able to make it if you come here? And that starts with being able to, negotiate your own conversations and, drive your own internships and so on. So again, talking to the mentors is definitely a good way to practice how to gather information, how to approach people. And remember that these mentors are also friends with, maybe not friends, but they are connected to professors in places, so that if, let's say that you have questions about something, they'll be able to say, well, you know what, I can probably ask my professor if they're willing to speak to you for X, Y, and Z. And there you go. So it's a lot of great information and a fantastic resource that I think is fantastic that you guys are volunteering your time, and I applaud you for getting it together. I know that it's been a while. I mean, Nick has been emailing me in between like semesters, and I'm so happy to see it happening. And I do hope that students take you up on it, and that they do join and get the value that you guys have to share. So with that, we have come to the end. We hope that you have enjoyed this conversation. If you have any questions, this is the time that you can put them in the chat, and then we will read them and talk about them. Otherwise, you can always connect either with me or with Nick by going to our website and sending us messages. And then, one of us will respond to you as well. So any closing statements from you, Nick?
Yeah, thank you very much, Wendy, for helping set this up. I think one thing I definitely realized when I got to the US, which this is a very American way of doing things, is that networking and networks are possibly the most important part of your university journey. And the essentially opportunity cost of leaving the country and leaving your home and your friends and going out there is that you get to build these extraordinary networks. And this can be, the start of that journey for you. You can get some experience just, chatting to people you don't know yet and trying to find the value that they might add to your life, and figure out, what are the questions that you don't even know yet that you have. Please take a look through the site and find somebody that you would be interested in chatting to, and reach out and let us know if you encounter any problems or have any questions. We're very excited to see some of you popping up on the platform.
Awesome. All right. So with that, I want to thank everybody for joining us this evening. I don't know if there are any questions. Let me just quickly go to the chat. Let's see. Yeah, no, I don't have any questions have come up. That means that we have done our job very well, Nick. We have explained everything well. So that's fantastic. So I do know that sometimes you rather talk to us directly. So by all means, if you have any questions, you can email us directly to our websites. Other than that, thank you once again for joining us this evening. We hope you find this valuable. I will be sharing a recording of this so you can watch it again and share it with your other friends and family. But please spread the word. This is a fantastic opportunity for students to get to know about other people like yourselves in South Africa that are thinking about reaching to universities overseas. And this is a wonderful way to get started. So thank you once again. Thank you, Nick. Enjoy your time in the Netherlands. And I am sure that I will be speaking to you soon about my students that are applying to Penn. And thanks again for, wait, hold on. I do have a question that came in. Hold on. Oh no, it was just, thank you. You're welcome, guys. Thank you so much for joining us and for your time. All right. So have a lovely evening, everybody. And we will chat to you hopefully soon.